Right, let me get started. So look, before I start, I don't have my camera on, mainly because my internet's pretty poor, and I don't want it to be chopping all the way through the presentation. So yeah. Plus, I'm not that much to look at. So let's get started. So like Jen says, I've been at ECS for about 3 years, and my main role is to help our clients in their digital transformation efforts. By trade, I'm an engineer and test architect, and the picture you see was before I got married and had children, so I'm a shadow of my former self, and I've aged really, really badly. Even with my weathered appearance, ECS keeps me gainfully employed, so I think it's probably right if I tell you a bit more about the company that pays my bills. ECS as an organisation is the largest privately owned consultancy in the UK. We have around 800 people, and our core focus is on helping enterprise organisations adopt modern ways of working and keeping them competing and fighting off those digital disruptors. We're based in the UK, but we have offices in India and Singapore, and we focus on enablement and upskilling. And all of our service offerings are geared to making your organisation perform better in the digital space. We've got a virtual booth, so please come and chat to us. We'd love to hear about your digital transformation efforts and your woes. Cool. So digital transformation, right? Everybody's doing it, but the success rates are pretty grim. There's some research that shows around 4 to 11% success rate for transformation initiatives. And this jumps to a really unexceptional 26% with high-tech industries. And as a company, we've got a pretty unique lens. We operate in the financial, energy, pharmaceutical, insurance, and retail verticals. And we've seen this failure firsthand. But we've also seen the successes. In those deliveries, we found that there's 5 key areas that can make or break a digital transformation. And during this keynote, I want to go into those 5 areas and some of the issues we've seen. But I guess more importantly, how we can go about fixing those issues and enable a successful digital transformation in your organization. So the first area, and one that's probably closest to my heart, is engineering. So like I said, I'm an engineer by trade, and I've been working as an engineer for almost 20 years, and around 80% of my time I've been involved in agile deliveries. The trend now with this digital transformation is to move quicker, release faster, being able to adapt to market forces and take action on a whim, and rolling digital products and features out into the hands of users frictionless is critical in remaining competitive. However, engineering doesn't, in my opinion, get the focus it deserves in enterprise. I think traditionally, there's been a mindset to offshore it, push it to a large SI and just wait for the delivery, which means I think our current leadership, for the most part, haven't needed to manage engineering teams at that level, and it shows. So there often seems to be a huge disconnect between the decisions at the top and how they filter down to development teams. So if you've ever in your organization seen enterprise architects make platform and tooling decisions without consulting developers and those that build the products, that's a pretty obvious and big symptoms. Engineering, as you know, allows you to move fast, and without it, no matter how big your ideas and vision is for a product, you'll never be able to achieve the release cadence you need. And I've seen so many projects miss deadlines and indeed fail, because senior developers were not involved in the ideation stage to give that project a level of realism. Some organizations do realize that having senior leadership and architects in solely making platform decisions is wrong, right? But they go too much the other way and give development teams complete freedom. I think this is touching on a point Jen made earlier in her keynote. And when we have a free-for-all, before you know it, you have multiple different languages in which you'll say developing microservices, and you're signing off licenses for 20 different tools. Resourcing becomes a real pain, and the ability to rotate and give your engineers new problems to solve in different teams all but disappears because the tooling, the languages are so different and disparate. There is another extreme, and that's not trusting engineers enough to make their own decisions. Having central teams manage everything from the libraries you use, the languages you use, infrastructure provisioning, code libraries, repo access is just putting your whole transformation on the back foot. You need to give them that a little bit of creative control in how they solve their problems. It's a simple fix. Just bring your senior engineers into the decision-making process, and that will yield huge benefits. QA. I think this pretty much falls in the engineering umbrella, and I'm not one for creating silos, right? But I think we still see some very specific testing problems. First and foremost, even in today's agile teams, we see a lack of QA resource. It's still very developer heavy. And this isn't about leadership not sourcing the teams correctly. I think we find developers on the ground don't quite understand what continuous testing is, what role they play, and what type of test automation they should write. They still have this legacy mindset in that they think testing should at some point be handed off to them and it's not their problem. So what we see is, to kind of put a plaster over this, is test automation engineers, when they get given this piece of code, try and fix a problem by writing these huge automation packs in something like Selenium or another UI tool. And if you have a test pack that takes hours to execute and you have a load of manual verification of the failures in the test run, you've probably fallen into that trap. And the key thing is that everyone should be involved in QA. Developers, testers, BAs, they all have a part to play. And that's why adopting a test-first approach like BDD or ATDD is really important. It's not about using Cucumber or SpecFlow as a tool to automate your testing. It's about getting the team together and defining the test before you even write a line of code. It's a development process, and one that, if done correctly, can help you achieve good test automation as a byproduct. Whilst on the topic of test automation, I think another big problem we see is traditional manual testers attempting to write automation code. And, you know, manual testers are worth their weight in gold. They have really, really good domain knowledge. But writing automation code is firmly a development activity, which is why the role of the SDET, or Software Developer Engineering Test, came into play to help facilitate technical test approaches and frameworks. We still need manual testers, and they should really concentrate on their strength, which is trying to break the system and help with the overall QA process. But unless they have training or the skills to develop, they shouldn't really be writing automation code. Again, I think the solution is really simple. Balance out your QA by making everyone in your team take ownership of it, and introduce a software developer engineering test, and that role will help you facilitate that holistic team ownership. Next area is data, right? Data is fast become the fabric of all things digital. And if anyone's watched The Great Hack on Netflix, if you haven't, I really recommend you do. It's quite scary, but also very liberating to understand how powerful leveraging data can be. You know, gone are the days when we need to base decisions around emotion or hunches. We have the systems and techniques in place that allow us to mine, report, and visualize data to give us the real picture to make informed decisions. But we see enterprise struggling to execute on their data strategies. You know, I've seen many data lake programs of work fail to live up to their expectations. There's not enough collaboration between business, SMEs, data architects, and development teams to define how that data should be represented and consumed. Then also, on the flip side, how to feed back into these central data source for the rest of the organization to leverage. Again, I think this is because the teams on the ground haven't been consulted and rather being dictated to. And one of the solutions we found to be work quite well is giving development teams the ability to define their own data models in collaboration with central teams. And we found that approach to be way more effective. That also, you know, when you decentralize it a bit, it also solves the problem of central teams becoming a bottleneck. Data requests come in thick and fast in a digital transformation, and it's not sustainable. We've seen many projects suffer, not because they lacked the engineering to deliver, but they didn't have the data they needed in the correct structure to serve their end users. So marketing is a funny one, right? And sometimes it's considered outside digital transformation activities, but we found it to be an important tool in many aspects. When we talk about marketing, we often relate it to targeting and updating customers external to our organization, when in fact, using it as an internal tool can really raise awareness of your digital transformation efforts. Having your key stakeholders on board and bought into your transformation is gearing it up for success. And they need to be proactively engaged and updated around the transformation successes that are driving your organization forward. Promoting and advertising this success is another great way for wider organizations to understand the benefits that are being realized with the amount of money that you're pumping into this digital transformation. You know, on the other side, you know, another area where marketing becomes quite interesting is, you know, we've seen multiple teams accelerate in a particular area. For example, they may have solved a particular engineering problem. Then teams in another part of the organization start on solving the same problem and perhaps in a different way. we really want to avoid the cost in reinventing the wheel, right? And having a marketing and communication plan at the team level solves this problem. We see it time and time again. There's not enough communication between organizational departments. People pumping money into problems they've already solved, reinventing the wheel, and then it ties back into the whole. When you have multiple tools in your ecosystem, that also fuels that as well. So it's something that can be solved just by a little bit of marketing communication. Business change is also another area I think we can modernize. As we move to quicker releases of features, and in some cases, brand new applications that are making processes more efficient and even redundant, we need to communicate to our end users what to expect, proactively engage them, and take them on the journey with us. Digital transformation will change their working lives, especially if you're making business processes redundant, right? And being mindful and sympathetic to that is really important. They are our key stakeholders. And like I mentioned earlier, we want them on board rather than being resistant. Customer experience. So this is a big one. Understanding and building relationships with your customers is a huge area of importance. Some would say the most important, because if you don't have any customers, you don't essentially have a business. And it's an area which leverages and brings together UX, engineering, data, marketing, communications, all the stuff that I've mentioned earlier. And without excelling in each one of these, true effective customer experience is really, really hard to achieve. Whether it's B2B or B2C, data needs to be readily available and flowing through your internal systems and applications and delivered to your customers in the lens in which they want it, in the device in which they want it. Using UX techniques and plugging in insights collected from each customer touchpoints are important in creating the products that will enrich your customer journey. So really spending some time upfront in co-creating these products, not just with your customers, but also with the data that you've collected. We don't see enough of this upfront investment, especially working with your customers and data. And a current trend is to push things into contact centers and not rely on true self-service that leverages ML and AI and things like chatbots. Again, it ties into the fact that your organization has not managed to get their data strategies correct. Data is such a big part of customer experience. In the customer 360 view, it requires your data teams, your business, your application teams working together. Organizations need to break down the silos and allow this collaboration to be fluid and seamless. Along with what I would deem the 5 core areas, or what we call the pillars, and I'll get onto the pillars in a second, culture and our ways of working underpin everything that we do. And I'm sure many of you have seen this, but when enterprises start on the digital transformation, I've seen many a time they bring in a load of agile coaches. Again, those agile coaches need to have a technical grounding. We're building digital products, or we're migrating from on-prem to a new cloud infrastructure. They need to have a technical grounding, or at least be coupled with technical coaches. Otherwise, they'll be communicating at a complete different frequency to the engineers. Setting up a scrum board and a process with the burn downs, lovely. But if you don't understand or appreciate the technical nuances of building digital products, it's really a fruitless activity. Enterprise, I still think there's a bit of a blame culture. I see it mainly between teams that have dependencies on each other, and it's normally fueled by different ways of working. If we can somewhat standardize to a certain extent the way we build software, so everybody has an appreciation and understanding of how the other team is creating their products and their services and their endpoints, then we go some way in removing the walls that separate those teams. I kind of touched on how leadership can dictate rather than take direction, so I won't go into that too much or cover it again. Another big one for me is lack of experimentation. That whole fail fast and learn mindset is still something that's quite difficult to adopt and quite difficult for people in enterprise to grasp, being very sort of delivery date focused, right? Deadline focused. We need to experiment, explore ideas, and we should definitely allocate budget for that. And it's important to note that, when you spend money on proof of concepts or POVs and you throw those away, that's actually a win, right? Because you've explored the idea and you're not going to pump millions and millions into an idea that users aren't going to use. So more of that investment, even if you do throw that piece of software away, it's really valuable in the long run for making you spend money or go down a rabbit hole. So those are the commonality of issues we've seen across our customer base. So how do we go about as an industry to fix these inherent issues? In our opinion, we need to create a unique digital space within your organization. And this space sole purpose is to raise the profile and effectiveness of the 5 competencies I mentioned earlier. That will directly affect the acceleration of your organizational change from the bottom up to your leadership team, top down to your development teams and the people at the coalface. This is achieved by specifically focusing on leadership, process, and engineering capabilities. Doing so allows us to affect change all the way from your IT infrastructure to your people, moving you to this new way of working that provides continuous and sustainable change that will stick. The key to successfully creating this space is implementing what we call the 5-pillar framework. As mentioned earlier, the 5 core areas where we see systematic issues and drawback to successful transformation are therefore what make up the core construct of this framework. And that's data, customer experience, software engineering, quality assurance, and marketing. We consider these 5 core pillars the success to a good digital transformation. And they should be the foundation of your digital space. Everything we do focuses on raising the profile and effectiveness of each pillar. By focusing on these pillars, you gain this holistic view of the project, enabling you to influence changes and drive improvements at every stage, all the way from ideation to communicating value across your business. We believe that transformation should help organizations achieve their goals. I mean, that's a given. And for that reason, before you mobilize this space, you need to fully understand the digital vision of your organization. What are your tangible outcomes and goals for the near and long term? The image on your screen depicts what happens when we start to consume teams into this space. It's key to set KPIs that are continuously measured against to ensure digital products you create add real business value. So this is, before you start this program of work, what are your tangible outcomes? And every single application should be mapped back to that goal. These KPIs are, not only measured against those business drivers and the business goals, but also the current effectiveness of each competency. And all of that's continually assessed to make sure that your digital transformation stays on track. The space should have a leadership team, right? And that leadership team provides guidance and governance on the 5 pillars and concentrates on delivering, upskilling people on the ground when they need it, and driving innovation through experimentation and R&D. So at ECS, we've developed this, funny enough, and packaged this space up, and we call it the engine room. It combines interventions conducted by 3 of our pod offerings, led by a leadership team that has specialists in each pillar. The leadership teamwork as one. This is the interesting bit, right? Across those 5 pillars, you get fluid and continuous communication. And that's what you need to ensure that teams are leveraging and utilizing knowledge from each of the core pillars. And all of that's fed back down into the team. So you remove the silos between engineering, QA, data, CX, and marketing. The teams on the ground also have a direct conduit of communication to the leadership team. So you get this constant feedback loop, and that ensures that deliveries remain on track. You can implement this in your organization by taking the concepts I've discussed and imparting a structure like this and creating a room like this. And I think you'll find it, really accelerate your transformation. But if you want to know more and get into a little bit more detail, please give us a shout at the booth. So the end state, right? We want to produce full stack feature teams, and you want to arm the team so they have the path to least resistance. Ways of working are standardized, tooling is reusable and shared across teams, allowing for teams to build easier, deliver quicker and better. Again, commonality of tooling allows you to move resources around, giving your staff a variety of work, but keeping them grounded in a framework that doesn't stop creativity. Making sure data is readily available for the teams, and allowing the teams to share that new data for the rest of the organization to use as well. An important one, business stakeholders, will have complete concurrency as well into deliveries and business value. As we map everything we do to tangible business goals, and everything we do is based on data, creating the dashboards and the metrics that allow you to continually measure that and projecting that back to the business will bring them closer to the digital transformation and know exactly the money that they're spending, the value is being realized. And above all, we want to promote a culture of sharing, experimentation, and innovation, where business and IT work together in this high-tech creative manner.